Hello everyone, I'm Emma and I will be doing my media presentation on how the murder and subsequent death of underworld figure Squizzy Taylor was reported in 1927. Okay, I'll give you a quick overview into the rather interesting character that was Leslie Taylor before I move on to the main focus of this presentation. Growing up in Richmond, Victoria, his nickname, Squizzy, was actually given to him during his school years and was because of a permanent squint that he had in his left eye. To look at him, you would have never taken him for a criminal mastermind, being that he was a rather short individual, short enough to be an apprentice jockey in his youth, in fact, right up until he decided that he wanted life to be a little less about work and started working his way through the crime ranks, beginning with pickpocketing, eventually moving on to much bigger acts of theft, including the crime that would cement his name in criminal history, a jewelry store heist in Carlton that would later begin the infamous gang war now referred to as the Fitzroy Vendetta. Reported in 1927, Squizzy's death was very much handled the same way any report about him or his many ventures were. They were incomplete, and depending on which publication you chose to look at, it would give you an even more dramatised view of the event each time. His death took place October 27th, 1927, after a gunfight with rival gang member by the name of John Daniel Snowy Cutmore at the Cutmore family home. All reports, both original and new, tell us that Taylor was searching Fitzroy bars for Cudmore that night. Around 6 p.m, they stopped outside the Cutmore family home, where he was sick with influenza. Taylor pushed his way through the door, past Bridget Cutmore, John's mother, and went upstairs hoping to ambush him. A detail Squizzy didn't know was that Cutmore was more than prepared for his enemies to attempt something like this and kept a loaded revolver under his pillow for safety. It was first reported by the Argus, a Melbourne publication, which had always had a particular interest in reporting all things related to Taylor. The media in the 1920s had a tendency to sensationalise Squizzy's exploits. However, every publication would often offer varying details about him and his team and their crimes. It was a constant competition between them that in a way helped him maintain his control over the city, as he himself was the only person who knew the truth about what was actually happening, and that continued to remain true right up until his death. One article I particularly like looking at was an article from the Argus. It contained big, bold headlines and dramatic sketches and dark photos. It was most definitely a Squizzy style article. A full life story and a focus on his accomplishments, both for good and evil. He was often depicted as the bad guy who had occasional Robin Hood-esque inclinations for how he helped out fellow bad guys until they were released from incarceration or able to live their lives on their own. He'd protect their businesses, their families, etc. He was outlandish and a well-dressed man who strut the streets of Fitzroy like the king that he and others felt he was. Money and women were most often said to have been his two biggest exploits. Depending on the day or report, he was Leslie, he was Joe, he was Squizzy, or sometimes he was even referred to as an unstable combination of the three. Crimes recorded, however, only listed him as Squizzy. Official police records only ever listed him as being Squizzy Taylor. And the only real truth that you get out of any article relating to him is that his name wasn't actually Squizzy Taylor. And when it comes to his death, was that he died as the result of a gunshot wound. Who fired the fatal shot, however, is still something that's actually up for debate. There were many reports of a mystery third shooter, multiple gunshots being fired before Squizzy was even in the house, shots fired after he had already dragged himself to a waiting getaway vehicle, the details are varying. He was quoted as telling police just before he died that he didn't know who had shot him, though some reports, including one from the Argus, say that the last thing he said was to his getaway driver, "I'm shot, drive like hell to St. Vincent's," and that was it. He never spoke again after that. Whether it's an article from the Courier or the Geelong Advertiser or the Argus, the fragmented details in the reports show us that where crime and media are concerned, nothing is ever simple. The actual facts are rarely available to be put out for everyone to see, and journalists will take something that can be relatively clean cut and make it much bigger than it originally was. There are three versions of every story in the media: the truth, what those involved in the actual event say happened, and what we, the viewer, are told happened. Now, Surratt notes that social constructionism is people creating reality, the world they believe exists, and in the case of how Squizzy's shooting and resulting death were reported, this was true. It was what journalists wanted people to think happened when they themselves didn't actually know the true details of what happened, who was at fault, if he actually did say anything before he died. The only thing that they gave us really was the largely unanswered question of who actually killed Squizzy Taylor.